Hi, welcome to this lecture on third wave feminism and beyond. So as you know, second wave feminism went from 1960 to 1980. In the 1980s, Ronald Reagan came into office and brought a very conservative government, which set the tone for the nation. So there was a backlash. Yes, again, a backlash against second wave feminism's accomplishments. Susan Faludi, a writer and a feminist scholar, won the Pulitzer Prize for her 1991 book titled Backlash: The Undeclared War Against American Women, in which she exposed the media-driven backlash against women's progress. Some examples of the progress included women getting college degrees because higher education was then open to women as a result of second wave feminism, their entry into the professional workforce as a result of women getting college degrees, and earning higher incomes, again, as a result of their higher education. But the media, with the support of the government, drove a backlash campaign against these accomplishments. So they started pinpointing things. For example, well, if women are complaining about sexual harassment, they wouldn't have to deal with sexual harassment if they weren't so ambitious to enter the man's world, aka the working world. So they didn't really target the root causes of sexual harassment, which is sexism and patriarchy. Instead, they said, well, it's your fault for being ambitious and wanting to be in that man's world. What else would you expect? They focused on the generation of latchkey kids being, kids who have their own key to come home after school, and there's no one at home to watch them until the parents come home at 5 or 6. So there was a generation of latchkey kids who found themselves coming home from school and being alone. And of course, the backlash pointed this out and said, we have kids and families that are neglected. We've got neglected spouses, meaning husbands. We've got neglected households because moms work now. It's no wonder family values are down. Instead of having a mindset shift that says, well, if moms are now working, maybe instead of putting all the home family responsibilities on the mom, something has to shift so that the fathers are also partly responsible, right? So in this country, we've never really had an equitable sharing of domestic responsibilities and childcare. Even though we have more working women, we still have a culture that expects women to pick up most of the domestic responsibilities. So that was one part of the backlash. And then, of course, looking at economic gains for women increased the divorce rate. And so the backlash said, oh my goodness, ever since women went to college and got jobs and started earning their own money, they're leaving their spouses. They're asking for divorces. And this is detrimental to children. It's the breakup of the family. This is true that divorce rates went up after the 1970s. In the 1980s, we saw a spike in divorces because women who could afford now to be independent no longer found themselves dependent on a spouse and found themselves, trapped due to needing their financial security, because now they could make their own money. So why stay in an unhappy, unfulfilling, even abusive relationship if you don't have to? So again, what the backlash does is it looks at just the surface problems. Yes, there was a higher divorce rate, but it doesn't look at the root causes that maybe there were problems in marriages to begin with, and the only reason these marriages were quote unquote working was because women found themselves financially dependent, and with unfair divorce, unfair child custody laws, they really were trapped. So economic gains gave them the freedom to walk with their children. So, third wave feminism and beyond. So, third wave started in 1991, and their issues of concern after the 1980s backlash, when the pendulum swung towards a conservative mind frame backed by the Ronald Reagan establishment. In 1991, the issues of concern that again surfaced for women were healthcare, childcare, maternity leave, which now we have parental leave or family leave. So it's not just for moms. So it's more open. It's for parental leave. So that includes fathers being able to take time off of work when they have a child or for whatever family reason. Big issue of concern was sexual harassment. The glass ceiling, which if you're not familiar with the term, I think everyone is, but the glass ceiling means that women are told they can be anything and do anything. So they look up and the sky's the limit. But they only get so far because what they don't realize is that the ceiling is made of glass. So they could look through it and they could see how far they could go, but they really can't because there's a glass ceiling that is stopping them from getting to the higher ranks of either administration, board members, promotions, that kind of thing. If you look at the makeup of the CEOs in this country, CEOs, CFOs, they're still primarily 90, I think it's like 98% white male. Another issue of concern was respect for a woman's choice, just letting her have self-determination, whether it's to pursue a career or to be devoted 100% as a homemaker. I mention this because after second wave feminism, there were some women who had the attitude that if you did get a college degree, why would you choose to stay home and be a homemaker? Isn't that what all the previous feminists had fought against? But we can't go to that extreme either, because to respect a woman's choice means that if she wants to be a homemaker, it's her choice. And honestly, that's such a complex, time-consuming, and probably the most important job our society has, is the maintaining of a family, right? I think families are the cornerstone of society. So you do want stability in the home. Children need stability if there are children. So one issue of concern was saying, you know what, let's respect a woman's choice and not kind of snub or look down on women who choose to be homemakers. If they want to take the traditional route, that is their choice, as long as they are fulfilled and it is, up to them. Female representation in the media, that became a big concern. They started looking at pop cultural images, especially in advertising. Jean Kilbourne, who made the documentary Killing Us Softly during second wave feminism in the 70s, she came out with, no, I'm sorry, I think it was late 70s, early 80s when she did her documentary that really closely examined advertising. She came out with a revised documentary, right? And she's been doing that every decade. She updates her very critical scholarly examination of how women are portrayed in advertising. Female representation in government, still a pursuit after 150 years. They said we need female representation in government, or else our concerns, our viewpoint, and our experiences are not taken into consideration. That's a perspective that's lacking. Second wave feminists looked at pornography as exploitative of women. I mean, it's still a very contested topic. Currently, pornography, a lot of it depends on trafficked girls. A lot of the girls are runaways. They are trafficked. kidnapped girls. And second wave feminism looked at pornography and said this is made for the male gaze. It's pornography for sexual arousal, but it's arousing for the male viewpoint, the fantasy. There's no representation. So in the 90s, women said, okay, we're not really fighting against pornography necessarily, but we are shifting towards sex positivity. Women reclaiming their sexuality, eroticism. So having a choice. If a woman wants to watch pornography, again, it goes back to that's her choice. And then you saw a rise in soft porn or female-directed porn. They said there is a place for adult entertainment in our lives, but it can't be all made by men for the pleasure of men. So the only way to fight fire is with fire. Let's have some female directors of pornography for eroticism. So that was part of sex positivity, and of course, looking at sex is not bad. It's not inherently bad. We can just have a say in it and celebrate it and stop treating it like it's a negative thing. More issues of concern. As you can see, there are a lot of issues of concern because unlike first wave feminism, second wave feminism really opened the floodgates for all issues of concern, and they said we're not going to be a one issue movement. So third wave picked up on this. We have a lot of issues of concern that our society has not dealt with. So another one was rape culture, really looking at rape and assault, especially on college campuses. There was a big student movement in higher education. This movement was led by college women. Things like Take Back the Night, which had started in the 70s with second wave feminism, saying, why is nighttime so dangerous for women and girls? Kidnapping, rape, assault, all these things. No, we have a right to enjoy 24 hours in a day if we so choose. So we can take back the night and have marches and vigils and speakers during the night as a way to reclaim that women can and should be safe even after dark. So there was a real push to examine and talk about rape culture. Women's health became a big issue of concern, and this ties in with Jean Kilbourne's examination of media-driven exploitation and objectification. So there's a strong correlation between advertising and pop culture images of women and eating disorders. So a lot of research has been done that the more media one is exposed to, popular magazines, advertisement, music videos, films, and today I would say the gaming industry, all of these always portray a very similar image of beauty, which is extremely slender, busty, big butt, and that has a correlation with women's dissatisfaction with their own appearance. So eating disorders skyrocketed, and as well as the examination of that. Part of women's health was also a fight for just open access to medical care. The argument is that women's bodies need consistent care from adolescence, starting in adolescence, due to the complexities of their reproduction abilities and our reproductive organs. So we need lifetime medical access, including birth control. Like some examples are birth control, breastfeeding monitoring, breast cancer, uterus endometriosis, irregular cycles, ovarian cancer, cervical cancer, thyroid issues, hyper or hypo, things that affect our hormones. So the female body is very complex, and third wave feminists said we need access to medical attention.